pre-budget workshop, February 25th, 2016. Before we go through the agenda, Mr. Campbell, would you lead us in an invocation? And Mr. Gray, if you would lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the love and blessings you have heaped upon us. Continue to be with us and lead and guide us, and lead and guide us today in our decision-making process. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Yay!
Well, Ms. Bidding has assured me that we will be here no longer than 6 hours under no circumstances. So we're going to go ahead and hold her to that, make sure that that is absolutely what's going to happen. We're here to talk about the FY 17-18 budget. So, Ms. Bidding, are you going to lead us through?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right.
Esther, I can't get this microphone any closer. Is that okay? There we go. Oh, all right, I'll borrow this one. Okay, we're going to, I gave you a handout, and of course, I just want to make note on the last page. I did leave a blank page there for you for anybody to make any notes that they might need to make. Just want to begin by saying, you know, we, in this pre-budget workshop, what we'd like to do, of course, is just have some open discussion from the board in particular, to see if there's anything in particular that they'd like to see in our budget for next year, any changes we might need to make. Of course, as you know, we are in the process of preparing our operating and our capital budget. We prepare a 2-year operating budget and a 5-year capital budget. I have received back capital budgets from staff, and I'm currently working on putting that together. And I've sent out to them, of course, all the information they need to start working on their operating budgets that are due back, I think like the second week in March, so that we can put together a complete draft for you to go through when we have our actual budget workshop.
Is there a preliminary summary on capital? Is there any items, do you think, is it going to be about where we have been, or anything over and above, or are we trying to hold back, or?
Well, in our capital that we do, like I said, we always put together a list of items, one that comes from equipment replacement, any construction or anything like that that comes from any of those designated accounts. And then we also always have on our capital, of course, what we call our wish list items. Those that would come from any excess funds when I do that quarterly transfer, any excess funds that we would have available to make those purchases. I've asked the directors to kind of take a look at their departments and maybe spend a little time today discussing with you any of those items that maybe we have put off that now we're getting to a point where we can't put them off any longer, because now that instead of them becoming wish list items, they're things that we need to have in order to continue operations. So those are some of the things that we will be discussing. And like I said, we'll go into more detail, of course, when we go through it at our actual budget workshop. What I have prepared for you, of course, on the first page is the revenues. That's one of the first things I try to take a look at, is where I anticipate our revenues possibly being for FY17. And that's where I'm going to focus primarily on FY17, of course. The first line item, as you see, is tipping fees. On page 2, there is a breakdown of those tipping fees in a little bit more detail. As you can see, we are anticipating an increase in our tipping fees. Solid waste, I've budgeted about a 6.4% increase in tons. As you can see in the first line, in FY16, we had 235,000 tons budgeted. This year, I've got 250,000 tons. What I do when I take a look at these tonnage, I take a look at the first part of last year versus the first part of this year, as well as the second half of last year, to see if there's any kind of growth from the first half of the year to the second half of the year, and work that into play with what we've seen so far this year to get us kind of a maximum and a bottom line where we could be maybe somewhere in the middle, an average, just to see where we might end up, we think, at the end of this year. And that's where I get these figures from. And then I also try to play it a little bit safe, even though for solid waste, for instance, I think what my average came out to be was closer to almost 260,000 tons. And I bumped that down because I like to be safe. I'd rather underestimate than overestimate, of course.
That's still about a 6% increase over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Make sure everybody's on the same page. Of course, our solid waste incentive, That is a tiered amount, but I did take a look, of course, of what we've done so far this year for an incentive, and we did increase that because we are seeing an increase in that solid waste incentive. Look, that is working nicely. Like I said, with the businesses that are bringing recyclables to the MRF, they get a solid waste incentive for the amount of tonnage they bring over there based on that, and that's tiered. So, like I said, the tonnage is definitely an estimate, but the figure that I've got in there, the revenue amount of the $192,500 for 16 versus I've bumped it up to $260,000 for FY17.
Which line item are we on?
I'm getting ready, I just finished the solid waste incentive. And I'm going,
First line going across?
well, I'm going, yes, I'm going down, I did solid waste, and now I'm down to the yard waste.
Okay.
All right. Yard waste, we have seen a decrease of about 6.3%. So we did, like I said, I did decrease that from 32,000 tons to 30,000 tons for FY17. Mixed construction, probably one of our biggest increases. I've had that at almost a little over 11% increase. We went from 70,000 tons to 78,000. And there again, when I took a look at my figures, I think our average was going to be around 82,000. So I did lower that a little bit to keep it safe. So glad to see an increase, of course, there in that tonnage. C&D recycling, like I said, this one's a little bit confusing if you take a look at this. I have more for the incentive than I do for the actual recycling, and that's because any of the rejects from over there that do end up going into our landfill come in, of course, under a mixed construction, because like I said, therefore, we don't want to count the tonnage both in the C&D recycling and in our mixed construction tonnage. So I reduce the C&D recycling tonnage by what we anticipate may go into the landfill. And like I said, and now that we're sending some out of the county, of course, that may be a little bit, a little bit less, of course. So that's why you see a difference between the C&D recycling and C&D recycling incentive. The tires without receipts, we've seen a major decrease in those. Like I said, and that's, like I said, I'm not sure if people are just, filing more ST-390s, so they're getting their credit back on those. But like I said, we have seen a major decrease in those. So I did decrease that. Our tires with receipts, of course, we've seen a major increase with those. So I'm hoping that that's why. Off-road tires, like I said, we just have seen a decrease in those as well. Our clean wood, we've also seen a decrease in that, but a lot of that has to do with the wood that's also going over to our processing facility now and not coming directly into the landfill. Shingles, we are down on the shingles a little over 21%. Our concrete and asphalt is down about 33%. And of course, our land clearing is way up. So we've seen a lot of that. So that gives you a breakdown of where our changes are, which is an overall increase in tonnage of 5.6%, and our revenue at the same amount, an increase of about a little over 5% increase in our tipping fee revenue. So that's definitely a positive. We're glad to see that. Last year, as you know, we had a decrease. So this year, we're glad to see a little bit of an increase in our tipping fee revenue. If you'll go back to page 1, I'm going to continue on down the revenues. And please feel free to stop me, ask me any questions as we go through this if you have any questions at all. The recyclable material sales, of course, you'll see a big increase there, a little over, or right at 1.9 million. Of course, that has to do with the revenue from Charleston's material as well. Our interest earnings, we have seen an increase in those. We're starting to get a little bit better interest on our investments, and of course, as you're aware, the county handles our investments. We are continuing to use Wells Fargo Securities is how they're investing those for us. But we do still have some in CDs, so they're still keeping a lot of different options open with our investments. And we do have a couple still in some money markets as well, one with the state treasurer's office, and I think there might be one at a bank as well that we have in a money market. So we have seen an increase, so we are, like I said, increasing that by 10,000. Our waste tire rebate and our container rental has maintained. They've both stayed about the same, which is, like I said, which is good. We haven't seen any decrease in those. So I did keep those the same for this year. Our landfill gas revenue, we have seen a decrease in, and I was talking to Bill about that this morning, as a matter of fact. And I'll, like I said, maybe let him give you a little explanation as to what's going on with our landfill gas revenue.
Basically, the gas is depleting out there. We hadn't put in new wells in a couple years. We don't have another expansion scheduled till FY18. We really don't have a good place to put any more vertical wells, and that's where the real winners are. Put those out there. So hopefully we get another year of fill out on the landfill, and FY18 we can put some more wells in, and we'll see that number bump up. But it's really just the wells that are out there is starting to deplete a little bit.
Is that just the decomposition over time of the materials?
Right. Eventually, once we close the landfill, I mean, the West Hill that we have right now, the one that was closed in 95, basically getting nothing out of that anymore.
How does that affect our producing of power? Of course, the gas, we sell the gas to Santee Cooper, and is that going to decline?
Well, right now, they're really only running 2 engines out there anyway. I mean, we have enough gas for about 2.5 engines.
Right.
And we should be able to maintain that till we do our expansion. So I don't know if that answers your question,
Yeah,
but
yeah, there's no drop off
no,
in production there.
not for the people that are taking the green power.
Right.
I think Santee Cooper said that if we don't generate more green power, that they were gonna look at cutting the power off to the board's electricity off, so you just keep that in mind.
Mr. Hillis, stay on top of that if you would, please.
Okay, the C and D recycling, of course, I've budgeted a decrease in that as well, and that has primarily, of course, to do with the, sale of the material over there, of course, with the prices being down on what we're selling the material for. So we've seen a decrease in that. E-waste processing fee, you see a large increase there. And that's because, like I said, the cost for us to process that material has gone up astronomically. Like I said, it's gone from $450 a ton up to $650 a ton that we're having to charge for the e-waste coming in over at the MRF. And of course, that is a pass-through item, that, like I said, we also have, like I said, we have an expense, but we do get a revenue for that as well. But like I said, other than a small processing fee for processing material, majority of that revenue goes back strictly to pay the expenses to process the material. The store, of course, like I said, we have budgeted an increase of $10,000 for the store. Like I said, they are doing a good job over there. We're continuing to see sales go up, so that's definitely been a positive. And then, of course, our last line item was last year, we've budgeted, of course, a transfer from our designated construction and development to balance our budget. I have not put a figure in there because, like I said, we knew that we would have to do that last year, but we were in hopes that we wouldn't have to do that this year. So we'll kind of, as I go through these, we'll kind of take a look and see where we are. So as you can see, our revenue for FY17, we've got $838,900. That's an increase over FY16 of $2,147,488. Of course, as you see there at the bottom, I've kind of adjusted that figure by the $1.9 million that we increased recyclable sales due to Charleston, so that we have a true figure. I wanted you to be able to see what our true revenue figure this year as compared to last year would be. So that way, when we take a look at where we are for this year, you can kind of are comparing apples to apples. I feel like it's a little more consistent. If you flip
We
over.
ask questions at this point.
Oh, yes, sir, anytime, please do.
The deduction of 1.9 million, as you say, is related to Charleston. And sometimes when you look at stores, when they look at year-over-year increases, they'll say same store sales. In other words, they're taking out the new store revenue. So you see year-to-year comparison of one year to the other, same, like. Well, that's what you're doing here. You're saying you're anticipating 13 million from our own operations, but you anticipate 1.9 million coming from Charleston. Am I understanding that?
Well, Charleston and our material, of course, but we know that 1.9 million is going to go right back into the expenses, of course, for the MRF operations. So yes, sir, and with what you're saying, you're right. We are anticipating an increase in that revenue due to Charleston as well as some of our material.
So that's not just Charleston,
It's overall, no, sir, like I said, because, it's overall what we anticipate an increase in revenue for the MRF operations.
Well, I must be misunderstanding how you describe that. It's additional recyclables revenue from Charleston, but you're saying it really is our overall.
It is our overall, yes, sir. The majority of it being Charleston, yes.
Okay. Without a whole lot of detail, what was your baseline assumption, since we're still kind of learning about how to deal with Charleston? How do you arrive at what the Charleston revenue would be? How did you anticipate that?
What we did was we took a look at the revenue that we have generated from the MRF operations, not just Charleston's material, of course. And we took a look at the month of October, November, December, and January, because we feel like those were our 4 consistent months that we've had since we've been using Charleston material. And we did an average, is what we did based on those 4 months, because we've had some high months. The beginning, back in October, the material was, we were selling at a little bit higher rate, and whereas back in December and January, it's been a little bit lower. So we felt like it was a good, solid 4 months that we could use as our average, because that's the only way that we have a basis, really, to take a look at it. So that's what we used when we took a look at this figure.
Yeah, in other words, you took the 4 months data that you had,
Right.
and you had some low months and some higher months, kind of average, good with the bad, so to speak. And I understand where you're coming from, and we'll just see how all that works out. While I'm talking about revenue, Mr. Chairman and Jan, I was at a Horry Georgetown Tech meeting earlier this morning, and we heard a report from Merrill Lynch. They have their corpus, their foundation money invested with Merrill Lynch. And Senior Vice President was there. So I asked him, I mean, we know each other, and first name's Reed, but I asked him, would he please look at the commodities market? Because we all try to pay attention. Well, what's the future going to be for prices? Is it going to stay flat? Is it going to go down, or is it going to go up? And not that Merrill Lynch or Reed have a better crystal ball than we, but I figured, well, I had him there, and he was making a fee off of $10 million corpus that he said, I'll be glad to get that for you, Mr. Gray. So he's going to check with his commodities people, and I told him basically stuff that we were looking at, not looking at pork bellies or anything like that. He knew recyclable, typical recyclable futures. He'll probably get back to me in the next few days, and it'll just be as expert additional information as you might find useful in trying to prognosticate, particularly 18, but 17 as well. So that's such a volatile market with India and China and all that kind of stuff. Oil prices, appearing down here, but perhaps he can give us a little bit of guidance about should we stay where we are or go down or go up, and by how much. So I offer that to you for your.
Be interesting.
It would be, yes. Thank you.
Jan, on a percentage basis, I don't have a calculator with me, but the 13.6 up to the 13.9 on a percentage basis, net revenue.
It's a little over a 15% increase, the 13 to the 13 to the 15.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, you want me to do the 13 to the 13?
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna get it in a minute. It's a 1.8% increase.
And I think the way Jan has tried to explain this thing to you by taking the Charleston stuff out. If we do that and we understand our budget and then the budget without it, if something may happen to the Charleston process in 3 months, then we don't have this big high inflated budget looks like that we got that we really don't have. So I think that'll help see the differences in them.
That's consistent with the information that, the Merrill Lynch fellow that I was talking about. He said that they'd, just had a seminar, or whatever you wanna call it, with, what's the big New York investment bank that, one of the presidential, candidate's wife works for? Can't remember, anyway, it's one of the big New York, investment banks. And they were, again, forecasting, and, they were saying, are we gonna be in a recession, or are we gonna take off? And he said, well, it's not real great, but, we're going to probably see an increase in the national market of 1.5 to 1 or 2%, and that's where you are. I'm just kind of patting you on the back, and
Well, good.
you consistent with this big New York investment bank.
Ms. Bidding, the county's making, they're doing our investments, aren't
Yes, sir.
they? Right.
Yes, sir. The treasurer's office handles all of our investments.
Who?
The Horry County Treasurer's Office.
Right.
Yeah, they're very good, they're very easy to work with, we're always working hand in hand with them. If we've got a project, kind of like our piggyback project we've got going on, we let them know that we're gonna have some big draws, some things coming out. So they'll work with us to make sure that our funds are readily available if we need them. So, they do a great job. Before we get into the last page here, I was gonna kind of, like I said, give every division director an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about what they've got planned maybe for the upcoming year, any new projects, any new items, as well as I wanted them, like I said, to spend a little bit of time maybe discussing with you any items that like I said, that they've been budgeting for but maybe have been putting off, that they feel the need has come, that they may need to take a look at trying to push those items through next year, just for your consideration, for you to be thinking about when we take a look at where we are for the budget year. Like I said, I'll kind of start off with the finance and admin department. I think I had kind of mentioned some of this last year in our pre-budget workshop, and I'm kind of doing it again. The one project that we're kind of taking a look at for the finance department, which really affects the whole organization, is time clocks. One of the things we're looking at and looking into is possibly putting in time clocks at our recycling centers. Currently, they use a manual timesheet that they write their time in and out on. It gets faxed over to us each week. And then the manager has to go through and, of course, manually time those sheets, put it on a spreadsheet to send in to us. Then we take them, once we get them, and do the same process all over again as a recheck. Like I said, we're spending time every week processing that payroll manually by adding it back up, and then we have to manually key it into our financial software. We do the same thing, of course, with our time clock from the MRF, from our landfill, from our admin office. We actually have time clocks there. We use the old-fashioned time cards that we have to go in, and again, like I said, we have to manually key them. Key them into our system, but we manually have to add them up each week. And I think we're just getting to the point where, one, it's very time-consuming for in our department, whoever's having to key it in, taking the time to do that as well. It opens up a lot of room for error as well. That's one of the things that we're kind of finding in some of the errors and things. If we don't take the time to go back and retime these time sheets or time clock cards and stuff, if we just went strictly off what's given to us, there'd be a lot more errors than what we're currently running into from time to time. The other problem, like I said, is manually having to key it into our financial software every week. Like I said, that gets to be time-consuming as well, especially because with our financial software, if we have to void a payroll check or void a run of checks for some reason, we can't just reprocess those. We have to manually go back in and key all that time in again for all of these employees. So I think it's a cost savings in that, like I said, it'll cut out a lot of time for both the managers and for the finance department. I think the managers will have an opportunity to better manage their time, They'll be able to pull up on the system, take a look to see what their employees have worked that week. Like I said, it'll just be better for that. I think the Affordable Care Act reporting will be much better for us as well as the managers as well. We have a lot of part-time people that work at our recycling centers, and of course, with the Affordable Care Act, they're not, we have to keep their hours under, well, we say 28 hours per week average, because anything above 30 hours, we have to offer them benefits. So we have to maintain that, and we're doing that manually right now. And we'd love to be able to have a report that we could print out each week, or even for the manager to be able to go in and look and say, hey, what's this employee working on average, for the past several weeks, so they can help monitor that as well. So there's a lot of different pluses to it. I know there's, like I said, I've heard that there's also some downside to it as far as, managers having to go in and make corrections to people's times when, they miss keying, they miss punching in, those type of things. But we're seeing some of that even with our time cards, where they punch on top of punches, or they don't punch in or don't punch out. So, like I said, just one of the things that we're trying to kind of take a look at for next year for the finance department. Our ultimate goal, of course, is to go with like an employee portal type system, where the employees, eventually we wouldn't even print payroll checks or anything like that. They could go online and take a look at their payroll check, their W-2, any of that information. That's not anything we're looking at this year by any means, but something eventually we would like to go to go that paperless route for sure. So that's one of the projects that the finance department's kind of looking at for next year. And like I said, and that kind of goes throughout the organization, something we'll work with all the managers on as well. But that's a big thing that we've got for next year. Like I said, I'll kind of let the other departments. Yes, sir.
Have you put an approximate cost on that?
Yes, sir, we have. For the software and everything, I think we're looking at around $25,000 to $26,000 for the software, for the time clocks. The biggest expense for it, of course, is going to be the ongoing internet cost for the recycling centers. They have to have internet service, and of course, that's going to run them about, I think it's around $35 to $40 a month. So that'll be the most difficult and most expensive ongoing. It's a one-time cost for the time clocks and the software, but after that, like I said, it would just be the internet service at the centers.
What's the approximate time you would guess? I understand guesstimation before you recoup that. I mean, from what you're saying, it shouldn't take a terrible long time in savings in man-hours to recoup that.
And I haven't really taken a look at that, but I can definitely do that and give you an idea of what that would save us. Like I said, I know just from our side of things, it would be a tremendous savings. Right now, payroll, like I said, and I don't do it, Susie processes payroll for us every other week, and, it's a 2.5 to 3 day process every other week, to spend. By the time she creates all the reports and everything that has to be done associated with it, it's very time consuming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that a savings of actual dollars or just time? I mean, are we gonna save overtime hours, or is there a part-time person that goes away because of the efficiencies, or?
And no, sir, like I said, it's more time savings, definitely. I think also, the way I look at it too is error savings. I think, from time to time, we run into a problem where an employee didn't get paid because they worked, and I hate to keep throwing the centers out there, but, theirs is so manual, or maybe they forgot to write their time in on a center that they worked at. Those little things like that we can maybe catch ahead of time that we're not having to play catch-up with, I think, as well. Our biggest fear always is overpaying or underpaying an employee. We like for their pay to be what it is they deserve it. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to keep from happening, as well as, like I said, but it's more definitely a time savings.
The two questions I had, Norfleet asked, the other two things is, I have seen in a lot of organizations where you start buying different software and doing different things. Is all of ours going to be together and work together? Because I've seen where that didn't happen and it caused a real problem and an expense later on.
Yes, sir. Yeah, excuse me. Yes, ma'am. Yes, this will be integrated into our financial software. So all we would do, we wouldn't have to key anything in anymore. It would automatically go into our software.
Okay, this expense, you said, is basically going to be used for the recycling centers? Are we going to bill that out to the county?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to get that right yet. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't sold Mr. Gosnell on it yet, so I'm still working on that. I have not.
He's back there grinning.
He's smiling, so it must not be too bad.
Well, I definitely think it's worthwhile for the efficiencies, and I think if managers keep up with their exception reports, not to inundate HR on the last day of the pay period, it really works pretty well, and rather than wait until the last minute and staying on top of those exception reports. So I definitely think it's a benefit from an efficiency standpoint, and glad you're looking into it.
Thank you. Okay, Esther, you want to take over?
Let's see, turn to the right page. One area, looking at, more so is, for the entire organization, and it's something Ms. Pam just alluded to. And that would be to upgrade and synchronize all of our, computers and software to ensure everything is communicating on the same level and at a level that's current and works with most programs that you might need to work. Currently, most of our computers are utilizing a Microsoft Office 2007 software, which is somewhat outdated. Right now, we have a few that are on Office 2010, and there is a Office 2016 available. So we are a little bit out of date. One of the challenges is, though, if I upgrade my computer and Mike hasn't upgraded his, then we won't always talk. I can't send something to him in my version and have him read it. He won't be able to open it. So that's one of the things that we've looked at, upgrading all of our software. We're talking approximately 30 computers here at the Solid Waste Authority, so that's upgrading 30 computers, hardware and software, at a cost, we're estimating about $2,500 per computer, which would bring us up into the $75,000 range. We do, in our operating budget, as a part of small capital, include computer upgrades every 2 to 3 years in departments. But what tends to happen is if Jan upgrades her computer, then her old computer gets shifted down to the next person, and then that computer gets shifted down to the next person, and it goes on and on and on. So you still don't ever have everybody operating at the same level. So that's one of the things we're looking at, hopefully sooner than later. The other item was, deals with this room here, and it's an upgrade of our audiovisual system.
Yes.
I think that was a motion and a second. I don't know about anybody else. That's what it sounded like to me. But we all know that we have some issues with our audiovisual system. It's dated. It was not originally designed to do what it's doing today when this building opened 15 years ago, 16 years ago. But we've been able to tweak it as we needed to, but that's all we've done. We've tweaked it. When it comes to the recording of our meetings, we're using very, very basic software, and to have our meetings videoed and accessible to those over the internet, we're using YouTube. So if YouTube decided one day they were tired and didn't want to do this anymore, our meetings would no longer be online. But YouTube is free, so that's why we're using YouTube. There are several professional programs similar to what County Council uses that we could utilize here, which would give us a better product, give us some more options, things that we can do within that program that we can't do now, maybe some indexing of meetings and things of that sort. So if you were looking for a particular item, you can index that through the agenda that's tied directly to the video. We don't have that capability now. And we looked into this when we initially started videotaping our meetings, and the cost at that point in time, if I'm remembering correctly, was in the neighborhood of about $40,000 to $50,000. We didn't have that money then, and we haven't done anything to move in that direction as of yet. We did have in this year's budget something I really wanted, and that was upgrading your microphones. so that it's opposed to me continuously banging on a window, and please accept my apologies when I have to do that. But it's to make sure you realize you're not speaking into the mic, so it means I'm not hearing anything. Was to maybe get you lapel mics. Then that way your mic is on you. If you turn your head, don't go to the bathroom, but it's on you, so that when you speak, you're heard. And that's currently in this year's budget, but it's one of those cash wish list items, and we probably will not be getting those this year. So again, that's something that's really kind of on the top, tippy top of a list for future upgrades. I don't know. I got 2 votes so far. One other item, and I'm gonna probably let Mike do this one. Mike and I have been talking about some upgrades over at the MRF, more so dealing with the back part of the MRF and the property behind it, and some possible expansions to that area because it's very much needed. You want to do that?
Well, basically right behind the MRF where the concrete is, we don't own the property behind it. And so we were brainstorming one day as to how we could possibly get the property behind it, not really spend any money. And because we ain't got any, so we figured out how can we get it. And, we thought about the Jason Boulevard property where the old MRF was at the beach. If we could possibly talk to the landowner behind us and say, would you do a trade? We'll have ours appraised, have yours appraised, and do some type of trade with it. Number one is what happens, and this happened long before Charleston ever come into play. If we were not able to ship material out, and I'll use cardboard as an example, the only place we can put it's in the open. And if it's material that gets wet, if it happens to rain, which has rained a lot over the last year or so, you can't ship it to China. You have to sell it domestically. And you take about a $20 per ton hit on it when that happens. But when the inside's full, which commonly happens, the only thing to do is to set it in the parking lot. And then that takes up space, and then you get 2 or 3 transfer trucks back there, and you can't move, and you can't get around, and it takes up space. But the logical place would be directly behind the facility where our current forklifts wouldn't have far to go, and you could put some kind of facility back there, but we don't own the property.
How much property are you talking about, Mike?
Well, there's 3 acres at the beach, and I think at one time it was valued at about $600,000 or $700,000, and don't hold me to that number. It was right around that number. So, we'd want property compatible with pricing, what it would be in that area. And I think it's on the county's tax books, but I mean, that don't really, but to the tune of about $15,000 an acre. So, it would be nice to own it right behind that facility since it's right up on that property line. And of course, we can't do that without board approval, and we can't transfer property without county council approval. So, it's got to go through this budget process and get county council's approval through the budget process for us to even consider it. So that's and we don't even know it's an option. We hadn't talked to the property owner. But it's something that we think is very needed, and a building put on it so we can put this material in there. To give you an example, just this past week, we bale wax cardboard. There's not a great market for wax cardboard when the winters aren't very cold because they make fire logs out of it. And we have about 80 bales of cardboard, wax cardboard sitting behind the facility that has been out in the open for so long. We could got rid of it this past week. But because it's been outside so long, we can't. So now we have to pay a tipping fee at the landfill, bring it to the landfill, and compost it. We're going to have to put it in compost. And 79 bales will take a long time to get into compost. And then the MRF has to eat the cost of the disposal for it. So that's just a few examples. And like I said, this stuff happened long before Charleston ever come to play, us setting it out. When that stuff gets wet, nobody wants it. And that's pretty much over there. That's one of the main things I think we need to look at some point in time. And these are a lot of things we need to be more efficient that we're talking about, and things like that we need, but we just hadn't had the money to do it with.
The property behind the MRF there, is it part of a large parcel, or is it small?
Part of a 4,000 acre parcel.
And all you're looking for is how much?
Well, I mean, we'd have to negotiate the deal, you know, we'd think our property at Myrtle Beach is, based on some appraisals we had done on it, it's right around $600,000. We'd like that, we wouldn't give them 3 acres of property for 3 acres, I wouldn't think.
No, but what,
Yeah.
what is your estimation that you need?
We probably
You need
need an
10 or
acre,
15 acres, or-
we probably need an acre behind it, it'd be enough for us.
An acre?
And what size structure and what cost to build a structure would be, I mean, the land swap,
Go ahead, Esther.
Use your mic. We were looking at a storage facility about the size, 50 by 100, about $300,000 based on the last structure we built out at the Murph. And like Mike said, we've been talking about this probably even back to 2008, 2009, when the market prices dropped and we were having a hard time getting rid of cardboard. And Danny even asked if we had if we had a way to store it until the prices can come back at that point in time. But we didn't, you know, and like Mike said, once it goes outside, you've pretty much just lost that commodity price.
I very much support what you're trying to do. When you and Danny and others escorted me through the Murph at an earlier time, I mean, you don't have to be real smart to figure out you don't have enough storage room for a number of reasons. You just mentioned them, and I understand that. I wish we could put it in right away. I mean, it doesn't even have anything to do with Charleston, but we don't, Charleston may go on for more than 2 years. And there might be another customer, so to speak, that comes in. Anyway, I support what you're trying to do, and that 50 by 100, it might not be enough. Just make it expandable. How many square feet are in the one at Myrtle Beach?
What is those, there's no building there, that's the one, the old Schaefer Beer Distributing Building, that building's gone, and we, it's just an open lot there, about 3 acres, I think it's 3.2 acres or something like that,
Well, the $600,000 number, was that
without the building on it.
without the building? Okay. It's how many acres?
It's like, I want to say it's just over 3 acres.
Yes, what was the loss and the cost? What was the total loss on the cardboard we just lost? Approximately.
Well, the loss on that material, we was gonna be able to get rid of it for nothing. Somebody's gonna come get it because it's not been a cold winter. We have sold it for as high as $40, $50 a ton.
Yeah.
But it's just been sitting out there for 6, 8 months, 9 months. And we was trying to get rid of it rather than have us having to pay tipping fees at the landfill for it to be composted. You know, we wanted to try to get rid of it, even if we had to give it away. And we couldn't even give it away because it's been sitting outside too long.
Well, in my travels over there, and I'm sure there's a reason for this, I just don't know what it is, I see plastic stored inside the building and cardboard sitting out in the yard.
If you take PET and put it outside in the sunlight, it will deteriorate the plastic. And same thing with HDPE and thing, and then you can't get rid of it.
Right, but is memory serving me wrong that cardboard is not worth more than that?
No, that's more than that. Cardboard, PET selling currently at its low it has been, probably about $150 a ton. HDPE, and colored, and other ones are saying in excess of $400 a ton, and cardboard selling for $100.
Thank you.
What were those numbers again?
Our PET selling for around $150 a ton, which is soda bottles.
Okay.
Yeah, HDPE colored is selling it, and HDPE natural, which is milk jugs, are selling in excess of $400 a ton, and cardboard's around $100.
I don't blame you, I wouldn't. That ain't a real hard decision to make, is it?
Is the reason you want to do it on this property or trade the property, is it close enough to where you're already bailing that, and I would assume that there's no other place to put a building of that size or attach it instead of doing that.
Well, our problem is our forklifts and being able to use our current equipment to move it from our facility to that facility, so we wanted it directly behind the building. And then when we went to load it, you know, we'd like to have some kind of loading dock over there. We wouldn't have to haul it back to our loading dock to load it. But that's sort of a wish thing.
You just keep adding things to this.
I said wish.
Don't you?
I said wish.
What actually would you have to have for this operation to work correctly? Because to trade the property and to do part of it, I can't see how that would work. So if you want to do this, I'd like to see everything that you would need so that that would work correctly and the total expense while you're doing that.
The reason it being, asking for it directly behind the facility, which is property we don't own, is to be able to, it'd be close to our current operations, and we wouldn't have a lot of employee times or additional employees or additional equipment in some other building. I mean, we got property out there we could build it on, plenty of property we could build it on. Problem is, you gotta take it from that building somewhere else.
I think anytime we have satellite property, like the 3 acres down there, the old warehouse, and we can manage to trade, sell that, buy something that's contingent, connected to our property is a good move, because we can always expand 10 years from now if it's connected and we own the property surrounding us. I don't foresee us ever having use for that 3.2 acres down there. And I just think anytime we can enlarge our footprint here and reduce our exposure and expenses to small parcels that we're not using is a good move.
Mike, is there, isn't that somewhat where that e-waste, we're storing some e-waste under a cover building back there somewhere, back to the backside over there?
Yeah, we built one there a while back to do the e-waste, because we have to process the e-waste up under a building over there.
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
Yeah, I'd settle for something like that, closer to the building. But that thing's used for e-waste. I mean, we keep it full of e-waste all the time.
I would have to assume that the $600,000, and I don't know when you had that evaluated, if it was recent or not, for the property you're talking about, the 1 acre we need couldn't be anywhere close to worth that kind of money.
No.
So if you sold that and purchased that acre, it would look to me like we'd have enough money.
And I don't know what they'll sell it for. I'm just saying that's what the tax value is. It was 15,000. It could be, I'm sure they wouldn't sell it for what's on the tax records for. Most people don't.
Right.
But, you know, you don't know without talking to them what they're willing to do. They may sell a large parcel of the tract, more acreage for that amount. I don't know. And I don't even know if they'd even be interested.
Right.
It was just how can we get something without having to spend any money?
Right, but it would look to me like if we do the trade, we could also, if you're only trading it for 1 acre or 2 acres or whatever, there would be money there to do.
Yeah.
And more left over to do what you would want to do instead of taking that out of the budget.
I personally think, excuse me, I personally think the trading is puts us in a much better position. It frightens me when we sell something that we'll get the money for it. County council seems to think once we sell it, it's their money, and they get to keep it and play with it. I think we're better off trading than we are trying to sell that and buy something else.
But when we, Mr. Chairman, but when we do take a look, I'm sure you would look and see what you need in the future, rather than looking at an acre or two. You'd probably be looking at 5 or 10 acres maybe, rather than something just to satisfy what we're looking at here.
You know, and I guess our question was, does the board, is there consent among the board for us to start looking at it, maybe talk to Riverstone and see if we want to put it in our budget, try to get something, and so we can get it in front of county council when we're doing our budget.
Definitely worth exploring. You don't know till you ask.
Yeah.
Thank
staff.
That we give staff, that's what I'm looking for, approval to try to work out a trade deal, as Mr. Jones was referring to. I make that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion then to authorize staff to explore opportunities. Is there a second?
I say.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All righty, that'd be a good opportunity to go and kind of explore and see what the options are for us. Good, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Hilling now.
Okay,
Here comes the big money.
we'll need some of that leftover money on that trade there. First thing on our list, our Christmas list here, is upgrade our fuel card system that we have out there. Our current system is 8 years old. As Esther was talking about computers and all that, it's pretty well outdated out there. The older it gets, the more maintenance problems we're having. We need something that's more efficient to report inventories and make sure at the end of the month, all fuel that is used is accounted for in all the departments out there. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, but
That system is operating off of a DOS system, if anybody remembers DOS. And so Bill's exactly right, that, we are spending so much more time with the system being down. We're manually taking fuel stick readings, and the reports we're getting are, like I said, our inventory is not correct because 9 times out of 10, the system is down more than it's up. Luckily, we're able to at least fuel vehicles. It hasn't kept us from doing that too much, so we've been fortunate there. But Bill's right, for reporting purposes, it's extremely outdated. And once again, would be a great help and make it more efficient, of course, for the finance department as well.
right, and we've talked to some folks, and we're looking at $30,000 to upgrade that system right there. Number two, we need some security lighting back there in the yard waste area. We've talked to Ori Electric, and we're looking at about $15,000 there, but we moved to the back. I don't know if everybody remembers, we moved the grinding area back there. And currently at night, I mean, we do have cameras that work during the day, but it's like getting in a closet and shutting the door. That's what it looks like back there at night. So if we had anybody come in here and did damage to the equipment back there, we've got about $2.5 million worth of equipment. We have no security lighting, so we really, really would like to get that back there. And that would, with our cameras on at night, we'd be able to detect if people were back there. And even sometimes when the clock changes, you get early morning hours, folks coming in, or when it gets dark early, it'd be really good and safe, a safety thing back there to have that. So that one was about $15,000. A wheel loader for our food waste operations. Currently, we're sharing one back there. We had one in this year's budget. It was in the unrestricted money, and we weren't able to get it due to some shortages and all that. Right now, we're kind of able to work things out. It's you take it for a little bit, then let me have it for a little bit. The food waste coming in is minimum. We have CCU, and right now he's doing about 6 schools. Esther and I had a conversation with the owner a couple weeks ago, and his plan is to have every Horry County school on board starting the next school year. So that, right now we're getting in 2 tons per day, 3 days a week. So that's really going to amp up out there. And it's going to take at least a half a day when that comes in. Time you cover it, you mix it, then you go put it in the staging line down there, then you have to cover it some more because it's a 3-to-1 mixture. We really need that wheel loader, dedicated to the food waste operation back there, just with what he's anticipating. And not just the schools, but he wants other businesses out there. And so, I mean, he really wants to grow his business in Horry County. And if that happens, we're going to need the equipment to accommodate what he brings in here. So a new wheel loader, that's $175,000, and that's what we had in this year's budget for that. So again, we kind of skated by this year, but if Mr. Bill Rowe gets what he wants as far as all the schools, we're going to need that piece of equipment to be efficient out there. Next on our list,
Bill,
excuse me. I'm sorry.
this would be an additional wheel loader.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Not the one where we knocked it down to 35,000.
No, sir.
This is freed up $175,000.
That's what a new one would cost, yes, sir. Concrete crushing, we haven't done that in 6 or 7 years. We did it the first 2 years I was here. Economy was really booming, and there was just a big buildup. We crush concrete when we can, and it keeps us from buying aggregate. We get 2 or 3 sizes out there, and we use that to build our roads, help beef up our working faces when it's real wet. And again, we haven't done it in, I think, 6 or 7 years. We've got 2 concrete piles. We've got one in the back behind the closure that we cannot put any more up there. And if you drive in, we've got another pile started where the old yard waste location was. We've estimated we've got about 12,000 tons sitting on the ground that we'd like to crush. Ballpark figure, getting some estimates, was about $6 a ton. So just looking at it from, give or take a little bit, we need about $80,000 to crush concrete. So that's another one. The fuel card we hadn't done in a long period of time. The concrete crushing, the same thing. We need to get that.
Right.
Yeah, if you would. You said that in the past that we had crushed it ourselves,
No,
right?
sir. No, we bid it out
You bid it out
and
altogether?
take the lowest bid for a company to come in and crush it. Yes, sir. We had one company, I think, come in from Sumter, and then, Mike, what was the gentleman in Myrtle Beach? Got it?
Arthur Tompkins.
Yeah, he got it 1 year.
Arthur,
Yeah.
What kind of time limit are we talking about here? We're looking at 12,000 tons, and what do we,
Well, you gotta realize, what was it, 2 years ago, we took everything we had and built the ramp going up on the new road to save that money. If you remember, we saved a substantial amount of money.
Right.
We took everything we had and built that road ramp. So this has probably been in 2 years, Bill?
At least, yes.
my thinking is, could we rent a crusher and crush it ourselves?
I really don't have the manpower to dedicate to it.
Okay.
To do that ourselves. We run, with minimal staff out there, so.
Right.
We really wouldn't have, and that's really not something we've done ourselves here.
I need to say this carefully. I'm aware of the crusher that's gonna come in real cheap. I'll just say, I'll see the bank's about to take it back. So, that's about as far as I should go. But, it may not be as much as what you say it would cost to get one.
To crush what we have on the yard, we've estimated about $80,000.
So that's renting.
That's the turnkey job. They come in, labor.
Private firm
Right.
would come in and do it and pull their crusher out and be gone.
They mobilize, they get insurance, and, they bring in the whole thing. We don't have to touch it.
I understand. When I get more timely information, I'll let you know.
Okay.
What this other thing might or is available for. A bank don't want no concrete crusher, I can tell you that.
Well, the product that we get out of there is very beneficial to our operations, and especially when we're building our new ramps, when we're going up, and it's really good and it pays for itself.
What kind of time limit are they looking at crushing 12,000 tons? They're looking at a couple of months, come in and do it in a couple of months?
They were here last time, yeah, about 60 days to do it all.
About 60 days, they in and out,
Right.
and leave you with a pile of
And
crush.
concrete that's got rebar and all, they crush it up real good, the metal comes out, so we get that metal out of there also. We can put it in our scrap metal pile, so it's, we get a little benefit from that also. Not that we need it this coming year, but probably within a year or two, a used roll-off for C&D recycling. The C&D recycling's been getting the pass-me-down from Rodney's division each year when he's gotten one, so we've always counted on that. They're talking to Rodney, he doesn't anticipate getting another one for 4 to 5 years, a roll-off truck. A used one is all we need. The one we got now is, it takes a bit of an effort to keep it going all the time, and it's just running containers on the yard out here. But eventually, we're gonna have to get something out here that doesn't, that doesn't break down regular and all that. Used roll-off truck, Mike and I talked about it yesterday, ballpark about 70 to 80,000. And again, we don't need the best of things, but we probably will need to upgrade from what we have out there. Shingle recycling. I've reported on that a few times during our board meetings out there. With the cost of fuel going down, they recycle the shingles. It keeps them from buying the virgin product to go with the asphalt, the tactifier and all. Well, with the cost of petroleum being down, it's about as cheap for them to buy the virgin product as it is to, recycle the shingles out there. We don't know for sure, but our hauler has indicated that he may not be able to haul them for free. And we get $19 a ton coming through the gate, and all we do is load it up, and they haul them off and grind them up. Looking at possibly having a per ton haul rate there, somewhere around $5 a ton maybe. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but just for budgeting purposes for next year, we've been averaging about, for the last 10 years, we've averaged around 5,000 tons a year. So we're looking, if it's $5 a ton, $25,000 that we're gonna have to pay hauling to move the shingles out. And since we've done this program, we've recycled over 30,000 tons of shingles. And I think we're somewhere in the ballpark, maybe 90 to 100 days of airspace that we've saved just on C&D. So it's a great, great program, and but fuel is down, petroleum's down, so it's not really worth them to come in here and get it, even though it's not costing them as much to haul it. They can go buy the virgin product and just mix it there, and they're not paying a hauling cost out there.
Phil, is there any room at all to stage that? I mean, gas is gonna go back up, we all know that at some point, the price of oil and all. Are we just limited in the amount of space that we can stage it for a period of time?
We could probably, we let it go for about 3 months, and we had a pretty significant pile out there. We just moved about 3,000 tons between January and February. I'd say about the most we could go would be about 6 months, and then we're gonna run it, because we have our tire pile, scrap tire pile, and right next to it is the shingle pile. So,
When we start getting stuff
limited.
stacked on the landfill that's a large amount, DHEC normally makes comment on it.
Well, not we were grinding shingles here at one time too, along with the concrete,
We did years ago.
or we were contracting, we weren't doing it.
Yes, sir. We were doing it. Very abrasive, a lot of wear and tear on the grinder, but the big thing we'd be facing now is probably having to get an air quality permit from DHEC on that. They've kind of clamped down as far as emissions with those ground shingles just being emitted in the air. It was very messy back there.
Okay?
The contractor is an asphalt contractor, is he not? Is that not who's
He is,
hauling the
yes,
car?
sir. S.T.
S.T.
Wooten
Wooten
out of Raleigh. They're hauled to Wilmington, the shingles,
Right.
where they're ground.
And so presently, they come into us and saying, all right, we've been hauling them for nothing, now we need to charge us, y'all $5 a ton. Is that what you're saying?
The conversation was, he said, didn't know how much longer he could take them for free.
Right.
With the way the fuel and all was, and he said, we may have to have some kind of little charge to you, hauling charge on it.
$5.
Because S.T. Wooten pays a subcontractor to haul
Come
them
in.
to Wilmington. Right.
Right. Well,
So I just want to be prepared on our budget, where
Right.
we don't have a 25,000 shortfall, if indeed that's what happens.
with what's going on throughout North Carolina, South Carolina, and everywhere else, roads, we got to have some roads, and the asphalt business is gonna pick up, there's no doubt about that. Like you said, we do what we got to do for the time being, maybe we can revert back to where we won't have to pay him anything.
Yeah, we're very hopeful of that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. The last thing I have on my list is something that probably won't be in this coming budget, but it could be the following year or the year after. As we continue to fill the saddle area out there, more and more C and D waste that went in there, and we have probably a good 5 to 6 years of capacity left on that C and D space. We may need to improve the leachate collection system out there. The 30-acre closure that we just finished, we had 3 sumps on the back of that. But talking to the engineer, Garrett Moore, we talked to Vance on it, quite possibly we're going to need to, he's indicated, and we don't have any final designs, nothing's been done on that, but we're just talking about the future. Is putting 3 sumps in back there and possibly a new force main to, it's not technically leachate coming out of the C&D, but still we need to move that liquid. We don't need it running out, so we'll need to move that liquid over to our tanks over there. To put in 3-phase power and run probably a 3-inch force main over to the leachate tanks. Talking with them, we're neighborhood of about $200,000. And again, we won't need it next year, but as we're talking about these things, where we're short on funds and you know, going forward, and this may be something that we may need to look really hard at. And you know, it's all part of taking care of our landfill out there. So wanted to make you aware of that. Again, we won't put it in FY17, but it, you know, it could come up in FY18 out there. So I wanted to make you aware of that. And we're talking with the engineer. He has no plans yet on paper or nothing, but you know, just saying, Vance, what do you foresee? And you know, with his visits down here, we're making our trips out there. So it's something we've got in the back of our mind we may need to do.
Thank you.
So that's the big things. It's not all our Christmas wish list, but that's the big ticket items right there I wanted to share with you.
Thank you.
Well, everybody's kind of been through, like I said, and kind of told you some of the items that we've either put off or we're trying to make do without, and some of our concerns as we continue to go forward, of course, with our budget process, but also just our basic operations out here, you know, trying to keep everything up to date and current. And like I said, our concerns. The last page in your handout, of course, is our budget shortage. What I've done here is I've taken a look at what our FY16 revenue was, what our FY17 anticipated revenue, of course, with the adjustment of that 1.9 million. As you can see, we have an increase of $247,488. Down below, I've listed the items that we know we're going to see an increase in for sure. First one I've got there, of course, is the transfer from designated. We had that in our budget last year. Like I said, but in order to balance our budget last year, we budgeted for a transfer from construction and development account of $469,812. That's not anywhere in this year's revenues figures. Like I said, because that's money we are anticipating still possibly having to use this year. As I mentioned at our board meeting the other day, you know, we are still in the black, but each month we're eating away at that a little bit, which we had anticipated that happening. Of course, for FY17, we've got personnel costs increase of $170,832. That is our step plan, as well as benefits associated with that. It's an increase in health insurance, an increase in workers' comp, different things like that. We always budget a 20% increase, of course, in our health insurance. Workers' comp, we're hoping that 20% is going to be enough this year. We've had not the best year, I would say, in some of our workers' comp claims. Ms. Powell had mentioned to me the other day that she hopes that 20% is going to be enough. She had the workers' comp person here, I think, about a week ago, and said, of course, that our rating was going to go up higher than it's been in a while for some of the claims and things that we've had. So we are going to see an increase there. The next line item that I've got there is an estimated increase for closure, post-closure, and construction. I've been in discussion, of course, with Vance Moore on where we are with our closure, post-closure, and construction costs. And he's done some analysis and kind of taken a look at it. We are currently putting aside $6.25 for every ton of MSW and C&D that comes into the landfill. And he is stating that, you know, we should be getting closer to putting in around $7.50 a ton. So the difference is about $1.25 a ton that we may need to look at working towards increasing. He hasn't said that we had to do it all in 1 year. However, With these estimates that he comes up with, he originally had estimated, of course, a 2% increase for inflation, and we would make that up, of course, with our interest that we're putting aside for these funds. Of course, we're not getting 2% interest. So therefore, it's running a little bit, short because of that. So that's why he wants us to work towards increasing what we're putting aside per ton. So like I said, what he showed me was $7.50 a ton, and like you said, he understands that's a big jump, and so but it's something he'd like to see us work towards. Of course, the next line item is the concrete crushing that Bill mentioned. These are just some items that we know or we feel sure is going to end up in our budget for next year. The shingle disposal expense that Bill mentioned. And then, of course, I've got depreciation costs, and this is an estimate, of course, and that depreciation cost is based on our equipment replacement fund, on any new equipment that we've purchased that will start depreciating, of course, this next year. Those are set costs that we know we're going to see an increase on. That doesn't include anything that may come up when we start putting together our operating budgets, any other costs that we may see. I've asked staff to maintain that if they have to increase a line item somewhere, to look to decrease a line item somewhere else to balance it out, so that we don't see any major increases. These are some of the major ones that we know we're going to incur next year. And as you can see, like I said, we're running in a deficit of a little over $656,000. So, we've got to take a look at what we can do to make this up. Last year when we had our deficit, we were fortunate enough to have a couple line items that we could reduce. We reduced our fuel contingency. We had also set aside money for Sunoco, and that Sunoco contract went away last year. So we had some areas that we could cut. We aren't that fortunate this year. And like I said, and as we've mentioned, as Bill's mentioned, Esther's mentioned, I've mentioned, we've got other things that we'd like to be able to do aside from this, that the funds just are not there. And that's concerning. It's concerning to us, and that, like I said, and that's why I've kind of also listed down below here, a consideration of a tipping fee increase, based on, a $2 tipping fee increase, $3 or $4. These are just some ideas that we're putting out there for the board to discuss and take a look at. We've as a staff, we've looked and we've talked and we've tried to come up with other options, other ways that we can cut costs. We feel like we have cut our operating budget every year. We take a look at it, and we've had very little increase, very little over the past few years. And like I said, we're trying to maintain those costs as much as we possibly can. But we're at a point now where we're not sure where else we can cut. And we need direction from the board as to where we need to go forward as we're preparing this budget for next year. So I'm just going to kind of open it for discussion. If you have any questions on anything I've put together here, like I said, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
I think we need to do the tipping fee increase, as Danny can attest to. I've been saying that since I got here. I mean, we're so far under market that there's no wonder that in some ways we're kind of rickety with our equipment, maybe running it longer and wearing it out. Charleston's sitting there at $66 a ton tipping fee, in Brunswick County, and Mike, every one of them. It seems to me if we went to county council and said, listen, these are just the counties around us. And, we can't continue to stay at these, I don't know how long we've been at $29 a ton, but we just can't do that. Plus, the county takes us 2.25 out of every ton right off the top. And, heck, I start with $4, and even that won't cover the full amount. Because
No, sir.
Whatever number we put up there, they're gonna cut it if they allow anything. But I feel that we need to go for a tipping fee increase.
The tipping fee has not increased since
2004, I think, is what I had in my notes here. Same tipping fee since 2004.
Actually come down.
It went down. I started to say it went down. We haven't had an increase.
That's when it changed in 2004. It went from, that's when the county took it to a quarter. It was actually $29 prior to that. In 1995, it was $30. 1995, it was $30 a ton, and that was instituted in 92. 95, it went to 30. Stayed to 30, and then after that it went down, and it's continued to went down since that point in time.
Could we get a summary of the surrounding counties and as a comparative analysis, so we'll have something to look at and?
Mike, just for their understanding, we'll get that hard copy, but give them the surrounding counties,
Brunswick County's at $58 a ton. Columbus is around $58 a ton. Marion County pays $38 a ton to carry it to Florence County's transfer station. Williamsburg County, just give you Williamsburg County, they pay by the time they get to transportation and everything, they're up in the 40s. And certain types of waste, they have to pay $55 a ton to get rid of. Georgetown County's 35. They were 38 and went down 3 times. Yeah. So they were at 38. They were 40 at one time. Actually went down a couple of dollars. Yeah.
basically what we're talking about here is MSW, not looking at raising everything $4 a ton.
Yeah, you gotta realize that it's fairly simple. Every $250,000 you spend in excess of today's budget is $1 a ton. That's what it amounts to. Just that simple. So for every $250,000 we need to do something else with that we're currently not doing in our current budget year, we need $1 for.
Chairman,
Right.
when they're collecting that information, I would be interested in also knowing what their level of tonnage is overall.
Good point.
I know the statewide average is $35, and DHEC publishes that in the Solid Waste Management Act. The statewide average is $35 a ton.
And I guess the justification for not having increases over the years has been being able to balance the budget without doing that. Even though costs go up, there hadn't been a freeze on salaries and wages. The insurance goes crazy every year. We all know that. The operating cost hasn't gone up. So my point is I've always been more in favor of steady, gradual increases that can be stomached rather than wait until we're in a crisis situation and go up on a percentage basis that might be something that is shocking to some people. And so I agree, we're below market. There hadn't been an increase. There's been a decrease over the years, and I think it's something to be very proud of that over the years. But I think that obviously we need to be looking at these tipping fees and probably looking at a plan to get where we need to be and to continue to address those things where businesses can plan accordingly, and that the municipalities and whomever, that it's not something that all of a sudden somebody says, well, 29 to 33 on a percentage basis is something that's larger than we might be willing to stomach. So is there an appetite? Where is council on this? I mean, has anybody talked? Does anybody know?
Mr. Gray may know.
Where?
Well, we all know what they're gonna say, but I've noticed that, Councilman Balk was very praiseworthy. But, we're wearing out our equipment. We're not replacing it. That's how come we've been able to do $29 a ton. We've even started taking money out of the set-off fee, what do you call them? Yeah. And so, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that $4 all at one time might seem a little steep, but if we get a good spokesman like you up there, and you just bring out the crying foul, besides whatever number we name, they're gonna cut down. And I think somewhere the most important thing is to get the discussion going, and let it be counter and back and forth. But we just need to move towards raising the tipping fee.
Well, it's obviously not sustainable to keep the fees the same when everything else goes up. I mean, the only way you're gonna do that is to continue to increase the volume, and we know that's not gonna happen, and actually on the C&D side, it's been reduced, so, it's just not sustainable not to address those things, and I think we do need to bring it to the table and get it on the, docket for discussion and start planning, because, again, it just, we can't continue to do that. We know expenses are gonna go up. That's, with the exception of fuel that nobody could have forecasted at all, everything has been going up and increasing over the years and will continue to do so, so.
Well, we've got our budget, the longer you wait, the worse it's gonna get, because the least things we keep putting on the wish list.
Right.
We just keep adding things to this wish list, and sooner or later, somebody's gonna tackle it. May not be us, but somebody will.
Well, Mr. Campbell mentioned the roads. I've recently heard the discussion about the cost of repairing roads versus doing them right the first time. And so it's kind of the same way with the equipment. You let it go on for so long without addressing equipment needs, then you're gonna get behind the 8 ball. And we know that. So, Mr. Graves, did you have a?
Mr. Chair, and one of the other things is we're maintaining the business on a day-to-day basis, and we're fighting against the factors of inflation that we can't control, and our present-day dollars aren't going to necessarily cover maybe what the numbers that we are needing to cover on a long-term basis. So we're fighting against time and the value of money as well. So I just think, the only thing we can deal with is the present, and then plan for the future.
The people that are gonna be making up the $1 million here, whether it's private industry that passes it on to their clients, or whether it's the county at the recycling centers, or the municipalities, they all have tough budgets as well. And none of these three groups are gonna be happy with this. They're not gonna like it. You're probably gonna get an outcry from all three of those groups. Having said that, obviously, we cannot run in a deficit. So we do have to think about this, as well as come up with some other innovative ideas, I would think, to increase different things, whether it's the food that we've started and they're going to do more schools and bring in more, or different kind of recycling or whatever. I don't think a tipping increase is the only thing we should be looking at. How did Georgetown go from 40 to 38 to 35?
I don't remember. At one time, they were back probably 6, 7 years ago, Bill, they was at 44.
Right.
They
Looks
fund,
like they've decreased a lot. How did that happen?
well, what they've done, I can't say for them everything, but I just know that a lot of things they were funding out of those tipping fees, they moved it like stormwater. They moved it out of it and stuff like that.
I think another thing they try to do with Sandlands opening up, they wanted to try to be a little more competitive with the C&D going over there. They wanted to keep it in
So they
Georgetown
could
County.
keep it,
Right.
keep it there. Being competitive's not a bad thing. That might help you make more
I
money.
mean, that's
too.
kind of, a little bit I got out of it.
Yeah, okay.
There was a pretty significant increase on the yard waste fee on a percentage basis, but I don't think there was any big numbers that would cause people to go, well, yeah, it went up, whatever it was, 14% or whatever, but I don't think anybody was going, well, that's caused me as a municipality or private business to get the shock wave that, something of a significant amount may. So that's just my concern. I do think that we definitely need to get it on the table, start talking about it, and put a plan into place. I think there will be some pushback, no question, but without a doubt, we can't continue just to keep the fees the same. Nobody in private business has kept the prices the same of whatever you're selling and or services you're providing. Everything's going up. So I think it's got to be, in order for us to be sustainable, it's got to be considered. And so
You can just look at the track record, that I'm not criticizing it, just laid it out as a fact that, county itself went through, I think it was 6 mills. They went up, again, with a lot of criticism, but it passed. And we're in the same boat. enough policemen and firemen, because we can't be competitive with the salaries. I know, it'd be a tough slug, but maybe we could, prepare a PowerPoint and a plan and, put extra work on Esther and Mike. And, come up with a presentation and, just get a starting point. We got to plant the
Sure.
seed. Hey, we need some help over here.
You know, Nelson Jackson, bless his heart, never wanted to go up on our lease fees at Ocean Lakes. It was people that he saw at church, he saw every day, and he didn't want to go up on the lease fees. So he would, every year, defer it until it got to the point where we got to where it had to go up, and it had to go up a significant amount, where the shock value was, the feedback we got was, listen, we understand it's going to go up. We'd rather it go up a small, reasonable amount on a regular basis rather than you wait until you get here and all of a sudden it's gone up on a percentage that, you're hitting me at a time. It's right after the holidays and we got Christmas bills and we can't handle that. We'd rather have a reasonable, steady, ongoing increase. And so that's what we've tried to do. And people can kind of plan for it and you understand budgeting for businesses or municipalities rather than going for the length of time that has been gone without any increase, and then, now what we're seeing. So I definitely think it's got to be addressed, and, something that we just can't continue to have the same fees and expect to be sustainable when everything else is going up.
It's an excellent idea, I think, if you're talking about coming up with something we got to do, but as you said, put it in steps, not necessarily where we're gonna go up $2 here. We don't know in 3 years, maybe we got to go up $4, but we'll go up $1, or this year, and 2 years down the road, we'll go up $2, but have some type of stepping stones there rather than all at one time. So I would like to see the staff put something together like that. Maybe you guys have already, I'm sure y'all had an awful lot of conversation about it.
Yeah, we've talked about it, and, if you look at these numbers that Jan put together, these parts right here is just stuff that's going to happen,
Right.
not stuff we need, not stuff we would like to have. These are things that's going to happen, a good possibility, 80% chance possibility, all these things would happen next year, or 90% of them. I think the thing that kept the Solid Waste Authority in good standing over the years, that it did keep its thing down and was able to take money and set it aside in those designated accounts, so when big things happen, they can reach and grab it, put a quarter in your piggy bank, keep putting that quarter in the piggy bank, but if you need $100, go grab the $100. And then continue to put that quarter in the bank. And it's got so tight that you can't do that with it anymore.
Mr. Campbell, why don't you make a motion along the lines of what you just said?
Let's see if we can, the staff will put together a plan on increasing the tipping fees, and let's see what they come up with.
Okay, we've got a motion to authorize staff to come up with a plan, try to balance the budget, and maybe consider not only FY 17 and 18, but even going forward where we think we need to be in 5 years and 10 years, and the best way to get there. So,
Second.
motion second, further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we had to get through this group
Sure,
before we even think about
right.
going elsewhere.
Is that just procedurally, obviously our budget goes to county council, so, they'll have an opportunity to be part of the discussion and, as Mr. Gray said, justification. If it were just increasing fees just to be increasing, it'd be one thing, but I think when, we're looking at the type of red numbers that we're looking at and the potential not to have a balanced budget, then we've got to have something that we can show we're not going in the negative direction.
Yeah, I think we'll have our opportunity next INR when we present the monthly statement, and I think we can start tapping there. They got the budget retreat coming up, and let me say, probably one of the worst things that I've done to this group is, we always said this year's not a good time to talk about raising tipping fees. This is going on, well, it's not a good time to talk about it, and we have put it off. We have been innovative. We have tweaked, we have cut, we have done without, we have done free, YouTube, everything we've looked at, we've maintained. But it's, last year, we went to that fund and we didn't want to do it. But that money spent, I mean, you can't go back and get it again. And that's the problem you have when you don't have a designated, amount of ongoing money that you utilize for something. So we will look at, every possibility. We know it will be a battle, and I don't know for sure, but I just about bet today that every municipal government and everybody else has gone up on their garbage fees.
I can tell you City of Myrtle Beach has.
And I guarantee you, and one year they went up, and I asked Mike, I said, I wonder why they went up. We didn't go up on tipping fees or anything like this, but
They were running
expenses, gas, doing business. And some of this stuff is really not wish list, it's some of it that just needs to be done. I mean, you know, we're gonna be planning this leachate collection system, but that's something that's gonna have to be done on this landfill. And the quicker we get a plan put together, we'll probably plan it this coming year's budget and fund it, hopefully in the next year. But,
I'd be a lot more concerned if we were facing the possibility of exceeding our neighboring counties
We
in
won't
terms of
come
tipping
close.
fee, and we're so far below that, you know, that's not a possibility. So if we were turning that thing upside down and still having to face the deficit, I would be a lot more concerned. The way it is now, we are below market,
and the services that they provide for those tipping fees don't come close to what we're providing here. Household hazardous waste, we could put that stuff in the landfill, but, once a Saturday every month, we collect and tractor trailer loads of paint, that we pay somebody to take out of here.
and there's a limit on that if anybody's interested, 'cause I found
You know-
out.
You know that?
I found out there's a limit on it. What you can bring over is I was trying to clean out my garage after 25 years. The good part was if the paint's dried up, they don't count it against you.
care.
And I had some in there so long, there was nothing, but it was solid, so, but I found out there is a limit.
You're not painting on the side, are you?
Even for board members, huh?
Oh, yeah. Pack rat. Paint that you're never gonna use, set in there for 20 years, you know, I don't know why it's sitting there. Okay.
Well, we appreciate your time today. Of course, our next meeting, we have a finance committee meeting on March 9th at 3:30. So, you know, we may have some of this information put together for them to discuss at the finance committee meeting as well, so.
Let me say too, that through this budget process, I'm looking at, somewhat, reorganizing, staff and departments and getting them more in line with what they do. So we will be doing a little bit of that through this process of finishing up this year's budget. But, this budget will reflect those changes that we put in place, and I think those changes will be good for the operation.
You know, I think it's an opportunity just to look at being efficient. I've said for years, you know, if you really wanted to save money immediately, you can go get rid of half your staff. But long-term, that's not a good business decision. So, you know, I would encourage everybody in management to look at ways to be efficient. And you want to utilize the resources you have and be efficient, and don't cut to the point where it impacts you negatively long-term. And so I think that as long as we're doing that and looking at ways to be as efficient and productive as possible, then, you know, we're gonna eventually get there the way that, we need to be. But you can't ignore the maintenance of facilities and equipment. You can't ignore customer service. You can't ignore the things that have helped us be successful over the years and in the short term to do that. But I appreciate the comment about looking at ways to utilize the resources and be efficient. I think that's what we all are shooting for. So
And I think
appreciate that.
when we lost C&D, one of the first things that we did, we didn't cut anyone, but we held positions, and I think there was about 6, wasn't it?
There was 5, and we
Five.
still have 3.
That we did not fund to cover those, and so we look at every opportunity
Great.
we can.
We appreciate that. Anything else from the board, staff?
Yes,
Oh, sorry.
please. One thing when we have our budget, I'd like to see all of our designated and undesignated accounts and how much money is in it and how much money you will be spending this year out of it so that I can see what's left in them. The other thing, all of your wish lists, I think to a degree we need. I think Mr. Hillings probably are higher on my list because to me, if I look at something like that with spending money, I want to see how it's gonna make us money and, what we're gonna be doing. So when you continue the list that we have, that you have under there, I'd always like to see how much it's gonna cost us, if it will make us money, and how long it will be before we can break even and pay for what we're doing, because all of those things will make a difference to me on whether I would vote to fund those things. So that's all I'd like to say.
Thanks, Ms. Creech.
What was the date, Ms. Biddy?
March 9th at 3:30.
And a question, I got the letter here from Danny, and with an agenda and a draft copy of the proposed 2016-2017 operating budget. And it says that our budget workshop to review this is 9 o'clock, Wednesday, March the 11th. Oh. Why did I get a 2015 letter?
See if you read them.
I read the first part, but I didn't read the last part.
I didn't get one of those. I was just looking at what.
This is
Oh, sorry,
actually,
Danny, I
this
didn't
is
know
a
nobody else got
2015
one.
budget that we got.
Three,
It's
was
kinda-
it March the
it's all
9th at
standard.
3:30? 3:30?
3:30,
March the 9th.
yes.
Yeah,
Because I got my calendar down and I kept looking for those dates and I said, wait a minute,
Something's wrong.
something's wrong. We don't have a meeting.
well, like John Long said, February the 25th, 2015.
Don't let him, he's still writing 2015 on his check, so don't you let him give you a hard time about that. So. Anything else from anybody? Okay, thank you, staff, for your hard work. Thank you, board, for everybody working together and try to get this where we need to be. Happy leap year, everybody.
As a matter of fact.
Extra day to make another $1 right? For this year. I think it's expensive. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Probably did.
We'll adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
You know, Little Abner, on February 29th, that was Sadie Hawkins Day,
All right,
and all the women chased the men.
Right?
tighten up, you're right.
Never happened with me. I don't know.